The following episode of We Making It is part of a mini-series highlighting the body business stories of dance artist professionals who are creative partners in the Sydnie L. Mosley Dances collective. SLM Dances is a New York City-based dance theater collective that works in communities to organize for gender and racial justice through experimental dance performance. This fall, SLM Dances is fundraising to build our collective power and continue to make this work possible. Hashtag we making it. In these body business stories, we speak candidly about our budgets and bank accounts while sustaining a commitment to impacting our communities with our gifts as artists. Please visit SLM Dance's website to learn more about how you can play a part in reaching our fundraising goal of $10,000 by December 31st, 2019. Again, that's slmdances.com. You want to know what else you can do? Well, let me tell you. Share this episode using the hashtag SLMDBodyBiz, that's biz with a Z, 10K, and help us share our body business stories with your community. Now, let's get back to the show. And we're back on another episode of We Making It. Ooh, this is your weekly conversation with New York-based artists about what they are making and how are they maintaining adequate water levels in the process. Because why? We can't be out here looking thirsty. Yes. So what happened last night? I think I recorded more episodes. What am I reading? I am still making my way through Sula, Rest in Power and Love. Toni Morrison, I adore you. And if you didn't listen to the last episode, you'll know that it's taking me about like a year or so to finish Sula. And so I'm working my way through that. Are you reading anything right now?
I am not actually reading anything. I have too many things happening to be reading, and I'm also doing a lot of writing, but it's not necessarily fun writing. It's like grant writing, evaluations, reports, all of that pesky admin that is necessary to keep things moving forward.
Well, I'd like to offer, I don't know if you guys remember Angie Pittman's episode, but Angie, through her performance time, started reading magazines because it was a little bit more flippant. You could pick it up, you could drop it off, and give you a little taste of something sweet, and then throw it away when you're done. So we are continuing our money series in partnership with SLM Dances, and we're just going to kick right into it with our artistic director, who I've talked to already, because I'm special like that. Which just reminded me, I am so special that you should email me. Yes, email me at katiesmiles.nyc if you want to be a part of the conversation. Katie, because my name is Katie. And then Smiles because it's so cute in .nyc because that's where we at. Also, super special shout out to Bad in the Bronx. I am recording remotely in Bad. I'm so excited. Thank you for letting us use your space, though we didn't ask. So, without further ado, usually, Sydnie, I would say, what are you making? But for this context, I want to know how you're making all of these things happen in the current time.
So, just because we are talking very specifically about how we're making our work financially, I'll just jump in there.
Go for it.
And the how is about a lot of organizing time and space.
Okay.
And it is also about creating as many opportunities to garner resources as possible.
Okay.
So how does that break down?
Right.
So time and space is literally just blocking out the time in the calendar.
Right.
And for me as an artist, it's really important for me to create that level of accountability so that I can continue to show up to do my own work.
Right.
So blocking the time out, having dancers commit to that creates a certain level of accountability so that no matter what else is going on, the least I'm going to do is show up to rehearsal to continue to make the work. And that is how I prioritize making work in my life. I'm also, over the years, have gotten really clear that not every season in the year is making season. And so have gotten really clear about like the fall and the spring are making seasons, and the winter and the summer are resting seasons or seasons to do other types of work. I didn't always know that. A lot of trial and error.
Yes.
And doing too much all at the same damn time.
Yeah.
So but that's kind of how things have shaken down.
Yes. Been siphoned through.
Exactly.
Yes.
Through the sifter. So that's that. And then the how, in terms of like how I'm supporting myself financially, is twofold. One is through SLM Dances artistic residency that we currently have through Lincoln Center Education. That looks like our education programming, which includes doing residencies that are K through 12 as well as university. And that doesn't mean that I'm always teaching them, but we have an education program where we are sending teaching artists out. And then obviously the company takes a part of that for general operating funds. And those are really our two primary sources of income. And then we additionally are applying for and at times receiving grants that are program specific. So right now we are running our Window Sex Project community workshops, which was generously funded through the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council's creative.
Shout out to them.
Yes, shout out to LMCC for the Creative Engagement Fund, which has funded this for the second time. The first time they funded it was in 2017, and this time again in 2019 to do a series of workshops in Harlem for folks to respond to sexual harassment happening in public spaces. So those are really the main sources of income, and then through that I get paid because of how we break down what does the artistic director get, what does the company need, how much do we need to save for taxes, blah blah blah,
which I would love to get into.
Sure.
But before we get into that, I want to make space for a conversation around the transition of the company to pay its collaborating partners. So going from not paying them per rehearsal, but for performances, and then this season you transition into paying an hourly rate in addition to performing. Can you talk to me a little bit about the need for that transition, and talk to me a little bit about how your conversation around money for the company switched to prepare you for that conversation or that transition?
Yeah. So bottom line, I have always been committed to compensating dancers for their work in rehearsal and performance. And when SLM Dances first began, we were only working project to project. So it was just come together for these few rehearsals. You'll get paid for the gig. We'll move on.
Cool.
When we shifted to a consistent rehearsal schedule that I wanted to do because I needed it for my creative process, like this level of accountability that I talked about earlier, that was why we shifted to a consistent rehearsal schedule. And so that meant that I was asking dancers to show up whether there was a show
or not.
Right.
And so at that point, that's when Candace Thompson Zachary, who at the time was working with me as a visioning partner, and she and I talked about, okay, if we don't actually have money to give to people for their rehearsal time, what else do we have to give?
Right.
And so we talked about, she very specifically said, Sydnie, you have a lot of information about goal setting and how to achieve, long-term visions and, implementing plans. You also have just received a lot of professional development around business and the arts, and you have a lot of connections.
Right.
Can you offer some kind of professional development to us to teach us everything,
how you're doing these
everything
things?
Exactly.
Right.
And so that became the barter essentially for the dancers' rehearsal time.
Okay.
And what happened was that the dancers really started to value that time just as much, if not more, than actually being in rehearsal. And so they wanted to show up for that. And then the reciprocity was, people were deepening their relationships through the professional development time that we were spending together, which then showed up in the work.
Right.
Because people trusted each other.
Right.
To actually okay, you can fall, I'm gonna catch you.
Right.
And they know that that's for real.
Right.
Right. Because they're in rehearsal with these people consistently. And because they actually have built a friendship based on the time that they're spending together outside of rehearsal.
Right.
So that worked for a while. It worked for a long while. And then we went through our strategic planning process.
Right.
And then a lot of the dancers who were with us before the strategic planning process moved on to other wonderful things. A lot of people went to grad school.
Right.
A lot of people, just wanted to pursue other endeavors. And so as we started to do auditions to bring new dancers in who did not have the same rapport, all of a sudden I was older than the dancers who I was working with. They didn't have the same experience or frame of reference.
Right.
Because previously I had been dancing with my peers who we had been in companies together.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, you want to come dance for me. Right. And so there was a shift. And then the added part of my commitment to very specifically wanting to hire Black women, and oftentimes the barriers for them to show up for a rehearsal process.
Right.
And this is another huge shift because we used to rehearse in the evenings. We used to rehearse from 6 to 9 in the evenings and occasional weekends. So it'd be like Tuesday, Thursday night, and Sunday afternoon. And before my own life, I needed to make a shift to put rehearsal during the daytime so that I could actually have a personal life.
Right.
Which was really important to me.
Right.
And I wanted to be able to develop that part of my life.
Of course.
And so it was important for me to put work during work hours.
Yes.
And being in rehearsal is work.
Right.
The difficulty is you can't ask dancers to volunteer their time in the same way during the hours that they could be teaching somebody, doing a shift somewhere,
right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Plus commitment to Black women who might have extra barriers to being able to show up, whatever those barriers might be. And so it became, in the past 2+ years, really, really hard to hold on to dancers. We had 4 auditions maybe in the course of 2 years, whereas previously we might have had an audition a year maybe. And the dancers that we would get from an audition, even if we had another audition the next year, those same dancers would still be there.
So you were just building to a pot versus starting from scratch.
Right. And this was the current iteration of Creative Partners. The only person who is with us now that started with us directly after strategic planning was Jessica Lee. And you want to talk about privileges and barriers and things. She is a white woman who has access to different things that allows her to be able to show up in a way that a lot of people just cannot. And she and I have talked about these things. And so it just became like, bottom line, we have to figure out how to pay dancers. We have bartered everything that we can possibly barter. We have offered every additional resource and generosity that we can get our hands on. And at this point, the bottom line is, for people to show up and show up fully, we need to write them a check.
So then that lets me know, like, okay, this is how SLM decided to pay their dancers. But we're also talking about, okay, so where do you get that money from?
Correct.
Yes.
And
who cut the check?
Right. And the thing that has been interesting is, like, we're still a little bit figuring that out. We've written it into our budget for Lincoln Center.
Okay.
We have written it into grant proposals that are out currently. And then we're also spending a lot of energy in prospecting for our education programs right now. So is that earned income stream of K through 12 residencies, university artistic residencies, going to set a piece, coming to do a short-term series of classes. That's really our main income stream. And the more of that we can do, the more viable our business is.
So then it also, what is coming to mind for me is that, so you were already in the business of asking. So in some ways, you've just shifted the ask to include the people that you're rolling with. And then it also, to me, sounds like you had already placed your education department in place. Again, you're just shifting the ask. And I think this is important because this brings me back to Joan's episode. And in Joan's episode, Joan has a really hard time looking at her finances. And I use the analogy, like, in the beginning, sometimes as artists, we got a big jar of peanut butter. That's all of who we are. But we just spreading it on a bunch of pieces of bread. But we ain't never making no sandwiches. Like, we ain't never really, like, making a meal that we can eat from. Like, basically making a check that we can cash and, like, get resources from. Whereas with you, it actually sounds like you were really strategic. You didn't have a lot of slices of bread out there. You didn't have a lot of different departments and things that you were trying to do with the company. But you were really strategic about, these are things that I'm already doing anyway. And so then when I had to do this ask, it seems like it's an easier shift. Also, which was the big point that I mentioned in Joan's episode, you took stock of the resources that you had so that your ask was actually quite specific. And I do find, speaking from the eye, there was a point in time where I actually didn't know what to ask for. Like, people would even ask me, like, something as simple as, like, what do you need in a rehearsal process, to something as big as, like, what's your hourly rate? And I'm just like, well, like, I'm trying to make rent. So, like, what's that an hour? Like, I could do coming from Texas, I was like, I could do like 14 an hour. I could do like 12. And people here are like, Katie, minimum, like, you're basically selling yourself so short. And so how can we just be in practice of, like, looking at really what we have, so that when we do ask, we're asking from a place of abundance, because we know exactly what we have and we know exactly what we don't have.
Exactly.
And I think that that's, again, a conversation that is so helpful, and a mindset that's so helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that is what BodyBusiness was about. It was literally about, let us work from a place of abundance. Let's take stock of everything that we have amongst us collectively. And then it's like, okay, well, who needs these things?
Right.
And that is how we're able to get people the resources. Also, just understanding that money is not the only resource.
Right.
And a lot of times when we write budgets for things, we're like, oh, we need $500. Okay, well, what do you need that $500 for?
Right.
Right? Well, I need rehearsal space. Okay, great. That might cost $500 at one particular place. And also, we know somebody who got the key to bag. Right? So it's very interesting how we approach
right,
getting the things that we actually need.
right.
And then I'll just add to say that I have actually taken a lot of time to figure out what I have, and have done what creative capital and exercise they offered me in a professional development workshop I did with them called Real Cost Budgeting.
Yes.
So what does it actually cost to live your life? Your like most full, thriving, ideal life that includes, secure housing and healthcare and vacation time.
And getting your nails done sometimes. And good green vegetables that's not from Uruguay.
Exactly. Right. So what does that actually cost? Using those numbers to break down what your ideal hourly or weekly or day rate is. And even if when you enter a negotiation conversation, right, you can't necessarily garner that wage every single time, right, but you have a jumping off point. Right. You know what you should be asking for.
Right. And you know what resources, because I know, shout out to Jasmine Hearn, you know that like, oh, this person may not pay me, but I know you have a great video, audio person. And so if you could just give me really bomb footage and like really great photos, we could be friends.
We're good.
We like, that's a very mutual cost that I can't afford, but you got access to.
Right.
Help me help you.
Right. Exactly.
But that is a great segue to real cost budgeting. So we talked a lot about SLM and Sydnie maintaining a company. Let's talk about how Sydnie maintains Sydnie. So,
Lord help.
Sydnie, on average, how much does your life cost, we'll say monthly? If you need some help, reach out and touch me, and I will give you some like ways to think about it.
I'm very clear.
Great.
I have done this work, and I will tell you that what my life actually cost to cover all of my costs, I need to be making, especially because I'm a contractor, I'm not salaried in any way.
Right.
I need to be making $4,500 to $5,000 a month.
$4,500 to $5,000. Does that include?
And that would cover
Yes, tell me what that includes.
That would cover health insurance. That would cover putting money away for a rainy day. That would cover, putting money away for vacation or anything else that I want to do. Plus meeting fixed costs, rent, food, et cetera,
MTA,
fund money, etc. Right? Cute. That's what my life actually really costs.
Okay.
How much am I actually making these days to like just get by is probably like $2,000, $2,500 a month.
Okay.
Which is not a lot of money for all of the things to take care of my life.
I'm so glad you said that, because we were doing an itemized list, which we will do for you. But Joan was shook when I said your life this month sounds like it's going to cost about $1,950. But then I broke that down. So guys, if I ever mess up a math in the episode, just like email me. I don't really care. I'm giving you like as quick as I can. Okay. So this is a great point. So if you're making $2,000 a month, 2 times 12 months a year is roughly
$24,000.
Great.
In New York City. I would like to locate us.
So I remember going in college, one of the lower paying jobs that I could have went into was a school teacher. In Texas, a school teacher could start out roughly about $30,000 to $35,000. If you had your master's, it could potentially put you up a little bit into like your higher 30s, mid 40s. Keep in mind that like 6 figures is still there. So we're talking about somebody that's 22, someone that's college educated, that's 22, college educated, making roughly something in between 30 and 40. You are making less than that.
Right.
With a bachelor's degree.
With a master's degree.
With a master's degree on top of that. And then 10 plus years of experience.
Yes.
Thank you. So just want to clarify that we ain't like the number that I just feel like, and I'm saying this to myself too, like the number that I'm spending is actually not that big. It's just that I'm not making that much. Because if you were to put it, for example, let's put Sid in her like peers category. So let's just say you were teaching at a university or even a high school. Let's keep it to like,
I mean, I've taught at both.
Let's keep it to like free education. I don't want to get into university because university is a whole nother thing. But if you were teaching at a grade school, how much would that be per year?
You know what's interesting?
Go for it.
Because I did teach.
Yes, I remember.
High school dance in the Bronx, actually. But it was a part-time job. And I was probably making just under or at $30,000, but for part-time work.
Right.
For 20 hours a week.
So if you double that, what would that have been?
That would have been $60,000.
So if you took that, what's 5 times 12?
Girl, don't ask me math. 60.
Right.
Okay.
So if you made $5,000 a month, which is what you said you needed.
Right.
And then you took that would be $60,000 a year that you would be spending.
Right.
Roughly. And you put it in the category of teaching, and put your requirements or specifications in there, you would be breaking even.
Right.
You would be making just enough to cover all of the things you need. So I just want to point out that if you put all of our skills, all of our artistic skills within our peers category, our spending is not the issue. It's what we're making. Like, I just want to say, for all of those beautiful people out there, we are not the problem. We are some of the most resourceful I have seen dancers do things. Then I'm just like, damn, that's so smart. We're brilliant. We know how to stretch a dollar.
Honey.
Sometimes we just need
the queen of the no budget production.
Sometimes we just need to stretch more dollars. But that is to say, this is a great segue to let's talk dollars. So if you make $2,000, $2,500, how does that break down? Is that like 30% residency, 30% education, or
in terms of income?
Yes.
That is so. That $2,500, let's say, is not all from SLM Dances, right? So the thing that I did not say at the top was we are working towards SLM Dances being my primary source of income, but I still work as an arts consultant.
Okay.
So I work with Betty's Daughter Arts Collaborative.
Shout out to Ebony Noel
Golden.
Noel, so sorry. So sorry, Ebony.
It's all good. And then I work with Purpose Productions.
Shout out to Nia.
To Nia Austin Edwards. And through them, I'm working on different consulting projects on everything from marketing strategy for artists to equity and engagement and strategic planning for, large arts organizations. And so I would say, depending on the month, I could be earning, 70% of my income from the consulting work and 30% from SLM Dances. And then sometimes it's 50-50. And then sometimes it's 70% from SLM Dances and 30% from the consulting. And actually we're in a month where it's 70% SLM Dances and 30%.
Now, so given that's a big shift.
Yeah.
Going 70-30, what systems do you have in place to make that shift not so jarring or anxiety inducing?
So I do not get anxiety about money anymore in the same way that I used to in previous iterations of my life. I had major anxiety about leaving my salaried teaching job and moving into a completely freelance life. But I had to make that decision because it had come down to a health concern. Like I could not continue to work there if I wanted to save my mental and physical health. Point blank, period. Must leave this job. Okay. And so in that first year after I left that job, I did a lot of consulting work. I saved a lot of money, and essentially proved to myself that I could live a thriving life as a completely freelance consultant.
Right.
This year, I made some very specific choices about shifting my work, labor, attention to my creative practice. And that was at the expense of the amount of consulting work that I was choosing to take on, which meant it was at the expense of paying my bills, to be very frank.
Right. But it sounds like you were very clear about...
I'm an artist. And so, you know, I would say in 2019 has tested how far I'm willing to go, how far on the edge I'm willing to live for the sake of making my work.
Right.
But what I do know is that I have to get my work out. I'm also, as an artist in the field, in terms of how I am and how my work is recognized, I'm in a much different place than I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. When I submit a grant application, I could actually get the grant. You know, I sit on other grant panels. I'm in conversation with people who have access to the resources that I need on a regular basis. So I'm sitting in a very odd place where I'm very close to the resources I need and have not yet garnered them. But the fact that I am so close to them gives me a sense of security that I can get them.
Right. Which then there's no reason. I wouldn't say there's no reason, but then that shifts how anxiety comes up in your body.
Exactly. And because this was a very conscious choice. I know how to hustle up on a dollar if I need it.
Right.
If I absolutely had 0 pennies in my bank account today and I could not eat, I would know A, where to go for a meal, and B, where I could get those, you know, whatever $5 I need, you know? But it is an active choice at this moment. And 5+ years ago, when I was making BodyBusiness, it wasn't a choice. I was drowning and I did not know how to climb my way out of it. I will also name that I do have a certain set of privileges that allow me to make a choice like this. And that those privileges very specifically are that I'm still a single woman. I do not have children and I do not have to take care of any aging parents, or I don't have anybody that is dependent on me. The only person I have to take care of is me.
Right.
And that is a privilege, to be 34, almost 35 years old and not have to worry about somebody else.
Right.
If I had to worry about somebody else, I would have to make entirely different decisions. And I might not still be an artist actively practicing. Yeah.
And I like what you said about it being a choice. I think that that's something that I've come into now working with SLM, but also just like making this podcast. It's been a shift in terms of like, okay, so what do you want to do? What do you need to do? What can you give up consciously, knowing that it might create a little bit of anxiety, but like remind yourself every time the anxiety comes up, like, yo, this is the end goal. It may shift, but like, can we just get close enough to the end goal so that we can even see if those choices even made sense? And so I love that. And I do love that you brought up privileges that a woman of color, of your age, of your volition, like that is real. I often feel like I'm in certain spaces where privilege is only with white skin or a white woman. And I've been trying to be really clear with myself too, like, oh yeah, like there are certain things that I know I got because of this and they've made it. And so just again, like I was saying earlier, how can you take stock of the resources that you have? Because per Dr. Kim from PSAB, if you don't know what you got access to, how in the hell you gonna give it to somebody else?
Hello.
But that is a great segue to what have been some barriers, race-related, gender-related, age-related. You mentioned grants and that it's been 5 years. There is an element of time that used to be a barrier that is not a barrier. But yeah, what are some like real barriers of like, if I just had this, I probably wouldn't be in this tax bracket or in this position mentally, whatever the case may be.
So I think in some like very practical ways,
right?
I do not have come from a wealthy family. My family is not poor per se. They're taken care of, but there's no generational wealth.
Okay.
We are the descendants of slaves in America.
Right.
And we have, had the opportunities to go to school, and each generation has paved the way for the next generation to do a little bit better, et cetera, et cetera. But my mama cannot pay for my life.
Right.
She can pay for her life. She can help me out, give me a couple dollars every now and again.
Right.
But she can't pay for Sydnie living in New York City trying to be an artist.
Right.
And so there are a lot of artists in New York City that even if at my age they're not still supported by their parents, part of the way that they were able to establish themselves is that they had significant financial support from family. I also do not have a spouse yet, right? And so that is another way that a lot of artists, like, their spouse got a salary job somewhere, and not to say that they're not responsible for contributing to the household,
but maybe they don't have to contribute as much.
Exactly.
Well, because I too have, a little boo thing. Shout out to Emily. She made great curry this week. But my rent costs, for example, are significantly different. And for those who do not know, I hit a real broke spot this past summer. And when I didn't have it, I could look to Emily because my mom is in the same case. My mom can't do much. And yes, my Nana, shout out to my Nana, can send a couple of dollars. But again, that's not the case usually. So I do want to just echo that, like, yes, when you have two people, the costs are split in half versus one.
Right. Exactly. And so, those are very concrete barriers.
Right.
It's interesting though, because what I do have on the flip side of that is, like, I do have significant support.
Which we're going to talk about.
From my family. So, okay, we're going to talk, I won't jump into it just yet. I don't want to mess with your flow. But I would say that other barriers are, here's actually a huge thing that I don't think is talked about a lot. So not before, but while I was starting SLM Dances, I danced in Spirit, a dance company that was founded by Crystal Brown. Shout out to Crystal.
Yes, she was mentioned in Jessica Lee's episode. She teaches at Middlebury.
Yes.
I need to meet her.
Yes, you do. Crystal Brown is amazing.
Please come meet me.
Amazing artist,
we can totally be friends,
etc. And I actually, with her support, inherited a lot of connections and resources. But the point that I'm making is dancers who come out of a company that has a certain level of institutional recognition. When those dancers say, okay, I'm going to be a choreographer now. I'm going to step out on my own. They can have the cosign of the choreographer.
Just being associated with that name.
It does give you a certain boost or a certain level of recognition that can give you can leverage access
the difference
to
between getting the grant versus not getting the grant.
It absolutely can. And it's not on the same level as some of my peers who did dance in a company that had a certain level of recognition. And it is just what you're able to leverage really as an independent artist versus coming from a particular legacy, et cetera, directly, I should say specifically. That too can be a barrier. That's a thing. And then I'm just trying to think of other things. I don't know. Just the fact that you got to work, right? I got to work. Like, I can't not work. I just, like, this rent got to get paid
on the first.
Some way, somehow. Exactly. So that's always going to be the bottom line.
Well, and I'm curious too, me, and for those who do not know, Emily is a white woman. And we've talked a lot about where our sense of safety lies. And your comment about I have to work makes me think about this conversation that she and I have had around at the end of the day, she knows that she can call her parents and they can help in a way that gives her comfort. And this idea of like, I have to work oftentimes has made me feel like it's me. Like, I'm not, like, yes, I could call my Nana, but she's probably going to clown me about how all I needed to do was just get the right degree from the school that they sent me to, and I wouldn't be where I was. And, or, oh, you ain't got rent. It's time to bring your ass home.
Yeah.
Because, and it can, and I bring that up because I'm really curious about what other people feel, because I know I have felt like, no, there is no safety, which is going to be a great segue in just a second. But I just want to echo that, like, yes, I have to work. And like, if I don't do my part, this will not work. However, that was my mentality coming into like first year, two years in New York. But now I'm coming upon my third year. And I realized that, like, yes, it is but like I have been in the city long enough that I can ask. And so, yes, to like, there is real unforeseen feelings and thoughts around what you know to be true. Like, if you know you got to work versus you know there's always somebody to call that's going to essentially bail you out. And luckily for me, I have found some people that will bail me out. Y'all, Sydnie had made me this, what did she make me? Oh, she didn't even make it for me. She just, she warmed it up. She had warmed me up some banana bread. And then shout out to Atlantis. I'm going to learn how to grow some herbs in my house. I've been like really interested in herb growing. So that I am starting to feel that if I do my part, other people will help me. That may not be the family that maybe my partner has. Like, I am slowly but surely creating this little nugget. Shout out to Jay Bowie. If I have something that like I need to have somebody to listen to, Jay will always like listen, and they will give me advice, and they're just available. And so, again, like you were saying earlier, those resources are not only better than money, but they are often the thing that I actually need when I'm thinking that I need money. And not for nothing, they have given me so much emotional grounding, because I am not in another iteration of my life. I'm still in the first one. And let me tell you, anxiety be sitting in my ear. And I just have to like take it out sometimes. But that said, Sid, if you lost all of your consulting work and got down to, we'll say 10% SLM. So you still got to come up with the 90. I'm doing this on purpose. I want you to get down to like your smallest stack of pennies. What systems, people, folk, prayers, meditations, affirmations do you have in place to fall back on, given that you can't make rent for a month?
If you're talking about I lost my consulting work.
Just for a month. Maybe you broke a toe. Or you lost your voice for a month. I don't know what body parts they need of a consultant, but just take away the one that they need. But they only taken away for in a month.
I mean, at that point, you're talking about we swiping a credit card.
Okay.
Which is not the answer. but because you said it's only for a month.
It's only for a month.
But if this was about to be like the foreseeable future, then we're talking about packing up boxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But where are you going?
To Baltimore. Where else I'm going to go?
I mean, they don't know that. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, sorry. That's where my mama and them live.
Okay.
Yeah. But that would be like, because you're really taking, when you say, okay, no consulting, only 10% of what SLM Dances is, and SLM Dances ain't making enough for 10% to meet, that's $10, right?
Right.
So that means that's like we're in a major emergency.
Right. That's what I'm trying to get us to.
Okay, well, that's carry your ass home. Which would be a huge deal, because I have been in New York City including college, for 16 years. And I have always figured out a way.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, and what that reminds me of too is that is still what some people might have to do. Like, it is like you are here by the hair of your chinny chin chin, by the grace of, be it God, Buddha, and them, whoever your and them is. And then when you don't have the and them and you got you, then you go home with your family. And I bring that up because not everybody has that.
You're right.
Not everybody has that, but then it gives you an ability to say, like, how do you take stock again? How do you look at the resources that you do have? And then, not for nothing, when we want to talk about Giving Tuesday, or we want to just talk about community spaces, everybody knows that I used to work at Gibney. Think about how you're entering these conversations, right? Because, like, if you know you don't have to go home, like if you are genuinely safe financially, because there's always going to be X to keep you here, you're going to work differently than somebody that literally is like, if I have to go home if this don't work. Like, this is my plan A, this is my plan B, this is my plan C. And it's not to create a barrier, but it is to create access in terms of conversation at a time where I feel like it's been shut off. Like, oh, you come from this and you do this, so we can't talk about it. But I need us to talk about it because this is how I need you to know that I need my paycheck on time.
Right. Yeah.
On, even early.
Right.
And just how then that shifts how you work, how you write grants, how you talk to people, how you move in these spaces. Like, money is such a conversation around support and safety for some folk, for me particularly. And so I think, again, it's just realizing where your safety lies. And maybe it is in knowing who you gonna call. You gonna hustle up some dollars. Somebody gonna have you a peanut butter jelly sandwich. Somebody gonna be like, ooh, come watch my baby and I cook you dinner. Or if it's like, look, I gotta go home. I gotta crunch some numbers, drop the 142, and then I'll be back.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, this is the other thing. Part of how I have managed to stay in New York City for so long is by being in New York City for so long. If I were to give up my apartment, I would not be able to, 9 times out of 10, in my current state of affairs, be able to get my name on the lease of another apartment. I've been in my apartment for 9 years, right? My mother is the co-signer on that apartment. My name has not always been on the lease. And there were some negotiations to figure out
how that could even happen.
That could happen because I've never had a full-time salary job.
Right.
Never. So, the bottom line of where you gonna sleep.
Right.
Right. So if we're getting to the point of I need to pack it up and go home, like, that's really a wrap. We're not there yet.
Okay. And I didn't think we were. For listeners at home, if you listened to Joan's episode and Jessica's episode, this is just a common question. Right. Just to see, again, what would you do if you was really on your last dime? Because, honey, y'all, I was like really on my last dimes this past summer. And it really forced me to take stock. And so with that, Sydnie, darling, where can the people find you?
You can find me on the interwebs at SLMdances.com. You can find me on the social medias, Instagram, Twitter at SLM Dances.
Yes.
And Facebook, Sydnie L. Mosley Dances. You can sign up for our newsletter.
Yeah.
When you go to slmdances.com, and you will get a little monthly message full of joy from moi. And it will let you know all the latest goings ons and what's happening next that you can be a part of.
Yes. So as always, I want you to make it live. I want you to make it breathe. I want you to make it bad because we up in that today. But as always, I just want you to make it. Bye, guys. You say bye to you.
Bye.
Now, a note from SLM Dances. This episode of We Making It is part of a mini-series highlighting the body business stories of Sydnie L. Mosley Dances creative partners. SLM Dances is a New York City-based dance theater collective that works in communities to organize for gender and racial justice through experimental dance performance. In sharing their stories with you, SLM hopes to make plain their needs as dance artists and inspire you and all SLM Dances community members to think and act from a place of abundance, empathy, and urgency. SLM Dances is fundraising to build our power as a collective. Our goal is 10,000 by December 31st, 2019. Please visit SLM Dances website at slmdances.com. That's SLMDANCES.com to join SLM Dances community and become a donor. Keep in touch with SLM Dances fundraising efforts by following us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, all at SLM Dances, and the hashtag SLMD BodyBiz with a Z 10K.